Today's lesson is on percents, and it covers page 11. Now the word percent, if we think of French, cent is 100, so the word percent means out of 100. A percent ratio that compares a number or amount to 100. So the symbol for percent is right here, and an example is 45% is 45 to 100, so this is written as a ratio, and this is written as a fraction. So these are all equal. There are three ways of writing percentages. Question 1 says 30 out of 100 squares are shaded, and we can see that image here. The ratio of shaded squares to all squares is 30 to 100, because we put the shaded squares first and then all of the squares. So there's 30 shaded squares and 100 altogether. We can then turn this into a percent. So what percent of the grid is shaded? 30%. Whatever our first number in the ratio out of 100 is. I'm going to let you do B on your own, but it's using all of the letters over here. So you'll have to count how many of each letter there are, and you're looking at B's to all of the letters. So if you were to write your ratio, it would be the number of B's to the number of all the letters put together. Question 2 asks us to write the ratio as a percent. So we're going from our ratio out of 100 to a percent. So 20 to 100 equals 20%. So once again, you will see that it's just the first number in your ratio out of 100. Question 3 asks you to write the percent as a ratio. They give you the 30%. You need to put it into a ratio of something to 100. The second number will always be 100 if it's a percent. What is our ratio for A? It would be 30. So we can see this connection. It's just whatever your percentage is the first number, and then 100 will always be your second number. Question number 4 asks you to write the ratio as a fraction and as a percent. So our first step is to write it as a fraction. So if we're going from 50 to 100, to write it as a fraction, it's simply the first number becomes our numerator, and the bottom number is our denominator. So this fraction is 50 out of 100. Then to turn it into a percent, that gives us 50%. So we'll see the 50 is the first number in the ratio, the top number in our fraction, and it is our percent. Question 5 simply asks us to write the fraction as a percent. So they've given us a fraction 40 out of 100. As a percentage, that would be 40%. So we're still seeing the same pattern. Our numerator is our percentage, as long as it is out of 100. Question 6, we're doing things a little bit backwards. We're going from the percent to a fraction. So 11% would be 11 out of 100. So we're still seeing that connection. Our last question for this assignment asks us to complete the chart. So we start with a drawing, a fraction, and a percent. The first one is done completely for us. So we'll notice there's 2 columns, so it's 20 plus 3 more, so there's 23 shaded, which is 23 shaded out of 100 altogether. So this is shaded out of total. And then our shaded number becomes our percentage. So if they've given us 63%, how many squares do I need to shade in? 63. So I can shade in 6 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 3 more individual little boxes. So it's all within this area here. Now I need to write this as a fraction out of 100, which would be 63 out of 100. So this is a quick run through of all of the different types of questions on page 11. You can go back and pause the video anytime you need to walk through a step again. Our second page, page 12, is on adding and subtracting percents. So we're going to look at question 1. There are 100 squares on the grid. Yep, we can look over it. It's a 10 by 10 grid. There's 100. There are 10 out of 100 squares that are red. So we're going to start by coloring in 10 squares red. So that would just be like one column. Now, the red area is what percent of the grid? That would be 10% because it's like 10 out of 100. Now, 40 out of the 100 squares are blue. So I'm going to color in the next 4 rows blue. Now, what percentage is the blue area? So this is not all of the shaded ones, but just the blue area. It would be 40% of the grid. Now, there are now 10 plus 40. We've got 10 red squares and 40 blue squares, and that equals how many colored squares altogether? That equals 50 colored squares on the grid. So what percent of the grid is colored? So 50% of the grid is colored. Question number 2 says to write the percent as a fraction. Okay, that's our first step, is to write it as a fraction. So 30% is the same thing as what out of 100? 30. 20% is the same thing as what out of 100? 20 out of 100. Now we add them together. So when we add, our denominators don't change, but we add our numerators. So 30 plus 20 is 50. So this was our second step, to add or subtract, and then they want you to write the sum or difference as a percent. So 50 out of 100 equals what percentage? 50%. So this is the same thing that you're doing for B, C, and D. By the time we get to question 3, and they ask you to calculate, you might have noticed that you can just add or subtract percentages because they're all out of the same thing. So 12% plus 20% is 32%. Now, question 4 wants us to determine the missing percent in the circle graph, because the whole circle represents 100%. It's 100% of a circle. So in A, we have 78% nitrogen, 1% other, and we have to figure out what this section of oxygen equals. So we need to figure out what the nitrogen plus the other is. So 78 plus the 1% is 79%, and everything left over is oxygen. So to figure out the oxygen, I need to, figure out 100 minus 79, because that's all of the other space. And that will give me 21%. So oxygen is 21%. You're doing the same thing for each of the other questions. For question 5, we have to look at the ratio of cents in a penny to cents in a dollar. So 1 penny is 1 out of 100 pennies in a dollar. So a penny is what percentage of a dollar? That would be 1% of a dollar. Then we look at the ratio of cents in a dime to cents in a dollar. So the ratio of cents in a dime to cents in a dollar is 10 to 100, because there's 10 cents in a dime and 100 cents in a dollar. So a dime is 10% of a dollar. I'm going to let you do the last part with a quarter here on your own. Now, B, what percent of a dollar is 35 cents? It's 35% because every cent is 1%. Oh, that's a weird pun. So then if we look at what percent of a dollar is 2 pennies and 2 quarters, it would be 2 pennies and 2 quarters is 52 cents. So that is 52% of a dollar. For question C, you're then just dealing with some subtraction. If you have $1 and spend 26 cents, what percent of the dollar do you have left? So you would just need to look at your dollar minus the cents that you've used, and that should give you your final percent.